Good evening, and welcome to the Shreveport Mayoral Runoff debate being broadcast and streamed live from the University Center Theater on the campus of LSU Shreveport. My name is Chuck Smith, News Director and Morning Edition local newscast host for NPR affiliate local public radio station KDAQ FM 89.9. Red River Radio is a public media service of LSUS. This evening's event is for 1 hour and will conclude at 8 p.m. Before I go any further, I must ask our live audience to please turn off or silence your cell phones and any other digital device you may have. Tonight's event is made possible with the help of Dr. Tim Magner, President of the Greater Shreveport Chamber of Commerce, as part of the initiative Decision 2022 for the November 8th election. We also would like to recognize the support of the Community Foundation of North Louisiana, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, chapters Sigma Rho Omega and Delta Lambda Omega, Rhino Coffee, KTBS Channel 3 News, and KTAL News Center 6. We also want to thank the staff and management of LSUS Events Management Office. For the November 8th election primary, there was a field of 10 mayoral candidates, and the election results revealed two with the most votes. Coming in with 28% of the vote was Republican former city councilman and local attorney, Mr. Tom Arsenault, and Democratic State Senator Greg Tarver with 24% of the vote. These are the Shreveport mayoral candidates for the December 10th runoff. Gentlemen, welcome and thank you for participating this evening.
It's good to be here.
And now let me introduce our panelists who will be asking the questions this evening. Both are Emmy Award-winning journalists. They are Troy Washington, evening news anchor from KTBS Channel 3 News, and Dan Jovic, evening news anchor from KTAL News Channel 6. Good evening, and thank you both for participating. And like the TV commercial, but wait, there's more. There are ground rules for this evening. They are simple. Our panelists will ask questions focusing on three categories. They are the economy, infrastructure, and crime and public safety. Now, each category will last approximately 14 minutes. Each candidate will be asked the same question and have 2 minutes each to respond, with the former candidate getting a final rebuttal of 30 seconds if they wish. After the third category is complete, there will be a lightning round of short questions, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer with no rebuttal. At the end of the lightning round, each candidate will get 1 minute to make a personal statement. Timekeepers for this evening are students from the LSUS Debate Club who are seated at the front row and will hold signs when 10 seconds remain and when the time is up. And as moderator, I too will be checking the time and guiding things along as the evening progresses. One other note, I would ask the audience to please refrain from applause or cheering during our event, as it will only delay things. And any disruption from anyone in the audience will result in getting escorted by security from the theater. And so finally, we began our Shreveport Mayoral Runoff debate. Having come in with the highest percentage of primary votes, we begin our first question for Mr. Tom Arsenault. The first category is the economy. Dan Jovic, you may begin.
Chuck, thank you very much. And gentlemen, thank you for being with us tonight, and we appreciate your desire and willingness to lead our city. Mr. Arsenault, we start with you. We have heard both of you gentlemen say on the campaign trail that making Shreveport more business-friendly is a goal if elected. The city currently is operating without an economic development director. If elected, is the hiring of that individual the most important decision that you will make in the first 90 days in office?
I would say it's not, and the reason that it's not is that we need to evaluate the city's role in economic development. Given the circumstances, it'll be important to evaluate that to determine whether or not and to what extent there will be an economic development department. One of the things that we need to make sure of is that we're not duplicating services that are being performed by Louisiana Economic Development, BRF, all of the other North Louisiana Economic Development, the North Louisiana Economic Partnership. So it's very important to evaluate that to make sure that the taxpayer's dollar is being spent appropriately. So economic development is very important, but I would say that the other decisions that are made, who will be the chief administrative officer, who will be the financial director, who will be the city attorney, those are decisions that are, I think, more critical than that one, and then we'll work from there.
Mr. Tarver?
Well, number one, I think that for economic development, you got to do something about crime, because without doing anything about crime, you're not going to have economic development in this city. The most important issue is getting a CAO at this particular time, so he can actually run the departments and pick the necessary, and help you pick the necessary people to run the departments in Shreveport. We have serious problems in this city. We have financial problems in this city. We have crime in this city. The city is dirty. It needs cleaning up. We have overcrowded jails in this city. We got to do something about all of these things. But the first thing, you got to get a CEO and do something about crime in this city. If we don't do anything about crime, there will be no economic development. Shreveport is a beautiful city. My family has been here for a long, long time. I love the city of Shreveport. We need to move forward in this city, but we need someone in the department, in the CAO slot, to do something about hiring other people, qualified people, because we don't have as many qualified people in this city in administration in certain areas. The bulk of the areas, people are good workers. All the city workers are good. We have good policemen in this city, but we just need to work with them.
And Mr. Arsenault, do you have any rebuttal?
I do not.
Well, we'll start this with Tarver. Young people are the future, and we are losing population, especially young people. How do we turn this around? What resources will you use, or who will you partner with to attract people, specifically young people, to our city?
Well, you know, the future of this city is young people. We got to involve them in the city administration. We got to put educational programs together to keep them here in the city of Shreveport. We got to provide the necessary jobs for young people that we do not have right now. We need to bring more industry here. We need to develop the industry that we have, and training programs and workforce development, so they will have and be trained properly. Like, give you an example. If Amazon ever opens in Shreveport, they need training. They need young people. We need to bring young people into government. Well, government, they can understand government and work with the people who have the experiences in government. And I think that right now we need to do something about, again, crime, to keep young people here. People are not leaving here just because they don't have jobs a lot of times. People are leaving here because of crime in this city, high taxes in this city, and they do not have confidence in government. It's just like a bank. If you don't have confidence in a bank, you're not putting your money in that bank. And that is what's happening in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Mr. Arsenault.
I'd like to cover two areas. Number one, most of the creative power that we have in our city is in our young people. And as a result of that, we need to explore the avenues that we have in the arts and in the sciences. And that, I think, is where we can pay close attention to our young people and catch their attention. The second thing is the same thing that we have done at the law firm where I've been since 2003, when we're attempting to recruit young people to come to work in Shreveport. And one of the things that we do is to focus on the really positive things in our city and the difference in a lifestyle in a city like Shreveport versus a Houston or Atlanta or Chicago, because the traffic there, the expense of housing, the expense of and the cost of living are all very important things. You know, when I moved here in 1979, I gained a whole work day every week just in saved commuter time from what I had to spend in Houston. I think that's an important lifestyle choice that young people are trying to make, because many of the young people are less interested in making millions of dollars, although they want to make a good living, but they're more interested in lifestyle choices. In Shreveport, you are able to have a lot more of your lifestyle. For example, you have a child that has a school play. Instead of taking a day off or half a day off as you would in a big city, you might take a long lunch hour. Those are the lifestyle choices that we have in Shreveport. The national statistics will indicate that there is a move to regional cities like Shreveport and away from the big population centers because of the cost of housing and the cost of living. I think that's one thing that we need to emphasize to our young people and to young people who will be considering making their home in Shreveport.
Mr. Tarver, any follow-up?
Well, let me add on. I had a daughter in Shreveport that left Shreveport and were hired in Baton Rouge. We need to provide the type of jobs in this city. I have 2 other young daughters in this city. We need to provide the type of jobs in this city to keep people here. You cannot blame young people who want to advance and go to Baton Rouge or Houston or Dallas. We need to provide the necessary jobs here in Shreveport.
Next question, please.
How do you plan to improve mayor-council relationships so that goals can actually manifest? If you'll start, Arsenault.
Thank you. Making sure. You know, one of the things that I learned when I was on the city council is that it's a very small club. There are only 7 members of that club, and you really can't have cliques. The same is true for the mayor's relationship with the council. The mayor really can't do anything legislatively without at least 4 council members. So the thing that the mayor must do is, 1, to make sure that the mayor has personal relationships with each of the council members. That will be a top priority for me, and it's something that I did when I was on the city council. So I do know how to do that. The second thing is for the mayor to promote good, solid relationships between council members or among council members, because again, it's a very small club, and it's very important that there be a cohesive team that's built. That requires leadership, and I think I've demonstrated that that's the kind of leadership I can provide to develop those relationships.
Tarver.
When I was chairman of insurance in the state, we had 7 members of the committee. I involved the committee with all the bills and everything. You got to involve the city council in decision making. You need to bring them in, and when people coming to present some type of program, and let them be a part of. Don't walk out there and give them any surprises. Work with them, deal with them, see them on a basis, on a personal basis. It's just like any other job. You have to work with people. It's just like the city of Shreveport. You have to work with people. Just like being in Baton Rouge with 38 senators. You have to work with them. You have to talk with them. You have to ask them about their project and support their project, and they will support your project.
Mr. Arsenault, any rebuttal?
No rebuttal.
Well, moving along to our next question, we'll start with you, State Senator Tarver. What do you believe are the most underutilized assets the city owns, and how will you maximize those assets for the biggest return on investment for taxpayers?
But I think that the biggest asset that we have are our people.
Most underutilized asset.
Okay. Well, we don't utilize them either, this report. The city of Shreveport have a lot of land asset that is unpaid taxes. We need to develop this land.
Specifically, what area?
I'll give you an example. We have land in the city of Shreveport that you can build single-family dwellings in Shreveport for low income. I don't mean apartment complexes. I mean home ownership, where people will feel a part of. You can take this land and you can use the federal government money, you can use city money, you can take the rent subsidy that they have today and turn it into home ownership. And by turning it home ownership, low-income people can afford houses. Today, the average rent is about $700 a month. To own a home for $125,000 is about $525 a month with taxes and insurance paid. That is the type of asset that we need to do. We need to involve more people. We need to bring low-income people, let them be part of the system. Because the American dream is owning your own home. And that is one of the assets that we can do.
Mr. Arsenault?
I would say there are 2 areas that I would point out as underutilized assets. One is our parks. Our parks have not been maintained as well as they could, and as a result of that, they're not utilized by the people who live around those parks as much as they could be. The second would have to do with substandard housing, or would have to do with tax adjudicated housing. As you may know, when when people don't pay their property taxes, it goes up for tax sales. Some of those sales result in essentially the sale of the property to either Caddo Parish or to the city of Shreveport. The city has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tax adjudicated properties. One of the tools that's available to the city is to work out an arrangement with the Shreveport Implementation and Redevelopment Authority, which has some powers to create certainty rather than just an auction with those tax adjudicated properties. That's a way to get those properties into the private market and back on the tax rolls.
Mr. Tarver?
I like to add on, and you'll hear this and I'm gonna sound like a broken record. One of the reasons why people do not use the parks and the playgrounds is because they're afraid. When it becomes 5 o'clock this time of year, they're on their way home. I was at the other day, I was at the fairground. It got 4:30, and let me tell you, I was getting ready to go home. And the reason why people are afraid, that's one of the reasons why they don't utilize their parks and their playgrounds.
Time, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we've concluded the first category, the economy, and in the interest of time, we need to move on to our second category, which is infrastructure. Troy Washington, you begin, I believe.
Arsenault, we will start with you. Eyesores have become too common in Shreveport. We can attribute some of that to lack of maintenance, but how do we preserve and what's already been developed while making new facilities?
Are you speaking about public facilities? Are you speaking about public and private facilities?
Public and private. I was looking at, you drive into some of the neighborhoods and you see some of the dilapidated buildings or such. So how do we restore those as well as create new establishments?
Thank you for clarifying. With respect particularly to blight, one of the things that I want to do is increase the number of property standards inspectors. And the second thing I would do is to cross-train people like zoning inspectors and property standards inspectors and people in permits and inspections, which is on the building end, so that there are more than one group of people that are looking at the dilapidated housing to make citations. We need to make full use of the environmental court to bring people into compliance. The purpose of that court primarily is not to tear down houses, although occasionally that's the last resort. But the second thing that it's there for is to encourage compliance. It's patterned after a similar court in Monroe. I went over there to observe those courts to see the compliance that they're beginning to get after several years. I'm hopeful that that will occur in the city of Shreveport. The second thing that I would like to see is the city to pass a blight lien statute. That is an ordinance that's permitted under state law but required to be implemented by the city, which it has not done yet, that would allow the city to place essentially a mortgage on dilapidated property to encourage the owner or to either restore the property or to have it sold to satisfy the lien.
Tarver.
When you have a lot of dilapidated houses in low-income areas, you'll have to increase the inspectors to inspect the housing. You have a lot of tall grass that don't have to be cut. And you'll have to increase personnel to make sure that they can do something about these areas. It's not going to be an easy process. You know, it'll take a long process because a person who owns a house has legal rights. And you have to deal with that situation. You'll have to pass new ordinances, like he said, to deal with dilapidated houses. You also can do a loan program, a revolving loan program, where people will be able to rehab their houses. Ownership will be able to rehab their houses with low interest rates to pay back the city. Not grants, I'm talking about loans at 3% and 5%. And because you have a lot of people out here that are looking for houses right now. People want to live in apartments, a lot of them. People want to live in houses. So you'll have to have some type of revolving loan program. You got to hire more inspectors, and you got to beef up the courts.
Mr. Arsenault, any rebuttal?
None.
Shall we proceed?
We're going to start with you, Mr. Tarver. How will you get Shreveport's adjudicated properties back into commerce more quickly?
Well, Number one is the redevelopment agency is one way that you can do it. Like I said at first, by creating a housing program for low income. You can take this property and you can put it in the redevelopment agency, and the redevelopment agency can do a lot of things that the city cannot do. They can tax land, they can do a lot of things. We go to the Home Mortgage Authority. When I was on the city council, I helped create the Home Mortgage Authority. You can go to the federal government and ask for money for housing. You can go to the state, to the housing department and get state money and put all this money together. It's not an easy process. It takes a little while to do it. But you can build houses for low income. You don't want to continue to build apartments because apartments will wind up being future slums. I've seen it in my lifetime. 2 or 3 apartments houses with beautiful apartment houses at first. Then they wind up being completely slum areas. And it become a problem to the city of Shreveport. So that is one way we can take this property and build low-income housing where people can afford $525, $530 a month. It costs, you own a house for less than you rent today, but they just need that opportunity.
Mr. Arsenault, adjudicated properties and getting them back into commerce?
Yeah, I think the most assured way of doing it is the use of the redevelopment authority. And the reason for that is the redevelopment authority, unlike the city, can enter into contracts with developers with respect to those properties. The city, in order to do it, in order to acquire an adjudicated property from the city or from the parish, it's required that there be an auction process. So if someone wants a particular piece of property or a group of properties in close proximity to do some indwelling development, there's not a certainty there that they would be able to obtain all of the properties that they want. The redevelopment authority has the ability to contract with someone without having to go to auction, and to put conditions on what will happen with the property, so that you have some accountability with what happens. The other thing that happens with an auction is once it's auctioned, the owner can do whatever they want or do nothing with it and just continue paying taxes. So it seems to me that the best way to deal with the adjudicated properties is to work out a contractual arrangement between the city and the redevelopment authority. While I was chairman of the redevelopment authority, we developed the legal infrastructure templates to be able to do that. We were not able to find our first transaction.
Mr. Tarver?
It's not an easy concept add on to it. It's an easy thought pattern, but it's very, very difficult to carry this through from 1 to 10. Just because you have adjudicated property, you have to more than likely, and I'm not a lawyer, but you have to make sure that property is clear if you're going to build someone's home on it. And you got to go more than likely to the court system. He knows better than I because he's a lawyer. But it's not an easy process. It's a complex process. But it's something that we need to do in this city. And you can put that land back on the tax rolls.
Time. Next question, please.
Arsenault, we'll start with you. As a journalist, I've done far too many stories about the potholes here and the condition of the roads here in Shreveport. I've heard things like we don't have the proper equipment, or the list is long to get to those roads in particular. How do you plan to tackle those concerns?
The first thing we need to do is to determine the priorities of them. You know, there is software available that's been used by the city in the past to determine what the most serious needs are and to address those first. Given the circumstances that most of us have experienced driving the roads of Shreveport, it's clear that we could not solve all of those problems in a very short time. So it's very important that we establish a set of priorities based on need rather than based on for example, districts or an equal distribution or whatever there might be. There are some roads that are worse than others, and we need to address those first. But it's just one step at a time, and then keeping the people advised where you're going to be and when you plan to get to those, so that at least if someone has potholes in their street, they have an idea when you might be able to get to those potholes.
Tarver?
We have so many potholes in the city of Shreveport. It will take priority, but you have to use the roads that's most traveled. When I go to work in the morning, I hit about 10 potholes. In Lakeside and Allendale, coming from St. Matthias Street, you had a lot of potholes in the city. It's gonna take a priority. It's gonna take people willing to get something done in the city of Shreveport. Everybody assumes, oh, we have so many potholes, how we gonna get it done? Well, number one, 1,000 miles begins with a single pothole. Fix the pothole at a time. And we're not doing that. We're ignoring it in the city of Shreveport. And that is what's happening. And we just need to get Public Works Department to start prioritizing these potholes in certain areas.
Mr. Arsenault, any follow-up?
No.
Next question, please.
Our next question piggybacks off of that, and Mr. Tarver, I'll start with you. What long-term infrastructure goals do you have for the city, and is a 4-year term as mayor long enough to assure that those goals will be accomplished?
No, I don't think it's long enough, number one, 4 years. It might take 8 years to do it. But you must have a program. And first, the people got to have confidence in government. Anyone that goes into the mayor office this term, come out, think they don't have a bond issue, that's not going to happen. You got to, number one, you got to take the present budget as it is right now. You've got to disrupt that budget. You got to remove programs that are obsolete in that budget. You got to cut the budget without hurting people. And that's very, very difficult to do, but you got to do it. You also have one-time monies in the city of Shreveport that you can utilize, like federal money. The problem with the city of Shreveport has been utilizing one-time money for recurring expenses, and that's the reason why we have a serious problem right now. It's not going to be an easy solution. It might take more, it more than likely is going to take more than 4 years, but first, before you have any type of bond issue, the people got to have confidence in government. And right now, I don't think they have that confidence in government because they believe that their money been misused and abused, and they're 100% correct. It's been spent incorrectly. So we need to first, like I said, have to give the people confidence in government. Then we'll be able to accomplish something.
What would your long-term infrastructure goals be, though?
Well, more than likely, once people have confidence in government, I think we need to have a bond issue about in the third, maybe second or third year of my administration, if I'm lucky enough and blessed enough to be mayor of the city of Shreveport. And then you move forward from there.
Mr. Arsenault, long-term infrastructure goals?
I would have to agree that the first thing we have to do is establish some transparency to provide information to the public so that the public perceives that their money is being spent well. I agree with Mr. Tarver that until the public perceives that, it's unlikely that the public will come up with a set of priorities to pass a bond issue. In terms of a bond issue, the best way, there are two things that are important about a bond issue. Number one is community input. When people are going to be asked to tax themselves, it's very important that they feel that they had an input into the process. So before I would establish any priorities, I would be asking the people to participate in open public debate about what the priorities are. The second thing would be to determine how you were going to structure the bond issue. And as a result of that, then you could go to the people because the people feel that there's ownership there. But I do perceive that a bond issue is several years away, even though I think it's needed, because I just don't think the people will support something like that in the very short run. With respect to, is 4 years enough? 4 years is what we get. I would plan to seek re-election if elected mayor, but all I'm assured of is 4 years, and so we'll establish those priorities within that 4-year period.
Mr. Tarver, rebuttal.
Add on to that is that I will use my relationship that I have in Baton Rouge and in Washington, D.C. to actually go there and beg for money for the city of Shreveport. In the Senate, I have a lot of relationships, good relationships in the Senate. In Washington, the president, special advisor, former special advisor, a very close friend of mine, I served with him in the Senate. I know Congressman Troy Carter in Baton Rouge, in New Orleans, and I will go to Washington and beg for money.
Time. Next question, please.
Neighborhoods in Shreveport, they are struggling. Some of the schools are in minority neighborhoods, especially in Allendale, Lakeside, Queensboro, and others. What will you do to revitalize those areas and create opportunities?
Mr.
And we'll start
Arsenault?
with Arsenault.
Excuse me.
Thank you. The most important thing we can do with those neighborhoods is to establish working relationships with the neighborhood leadership in those neighborhoods, to let them know that they are heard, that their needs are important to the mayor. Those are things that I plan to do. As you may know, I've been walking door to door since the 9th of April, and as a result of that, I've developed a lot of relationships in neighborhoods that I plan to use to let them know that their neighborhoods are, every neighborhood is important to the city of Shreveport. I happen to live in an inner city neighborhood in Highland, so I understand better than most what the problems are in a neighborhood like that that has dilapidated housing and that also has schools that are being closed. And that's a big blow to a neighborhood, so repositioning those schools, repurposing those schools is important. Those are owned by the Caddo Parish School Board, so I'll have to use my persuasive powers to convince the school board to make solid use of those facilities so that they will become again a neighborhood center as they were many years ago.
Tarver.
Queensboro, Lakeside, Moortown, all of these areas, Dr. Martin Luther King area, they don't feel like they're part of the city of Shreveport because they've been ignored so long. We got to get them involved and let them know that they are part of the city of Shreveport, just like Spring Lake. We got to pay attention to their needs, just like we do people in other areas. We got to work with the individual. We got to help them to establish associations in their community and let them know that they'll be able to come to the mayor's office and talk to the mayor, where they will be able to be part of the system itself. They don't feel like they're a part of. They look around, the streets are never repaired, the sidewalks are never repaired, tall grass on empty lots, and they just don't feel a part of. You need someone who can communicate. You need someone who can talk to them, who know them. And I do know people in those areas very well at Lakeside and Allendale. By the way, I was born in Lakeside. I've been there all my life. My family been there all their life. We need to work together as one and let them feel like they're part of Shreveport, Louisiana. They do not feel a part of like Spring Lake and other areas like that. We need to have them to participate.
Mr. Arsenault, a rebuttal?
No?
We have one final question in infrastructure. Dan, would you go ahead?
Absolutely, and we'll start with you, Mr. Tarver. Will you push for the completion of the I-49 connector, and if so, why are you the person that will finally get this project done when others have not been able to?
Well, number one, I support the inner city connector. My friend, Senator Barrow, and I, we work together. We have $100 million in the budget for that. That's our portion. We need federal money, and everything is being basically held up because of the federal government and the rules of the federal government. But I'm support that 100%. I think it will help revitalize the area in Lakeside and Allendale. It will eliminate a lot of blighted area at this particular time, and you can have economic developments in these areas. What we need desperately around Lakeside and Allendale and all the way in part of Cooper Road. So I support I-49 Inner City Connector. I'm 100% behind it.
Mr. Arsenault?
On this point, we agree. I support the I-49 connector. As you may be aware, the city of Shreveport is who made the motion at the NLCOG meeting to actually go forward with it. That was done by Mayor Ollie Tyler, and we need to follow through with that. The rest of the process, however, is pretty much outside the control of the city of Shreveport. The mayor has to be an advocate for the swift completion of that process. The people of Allendale deserve that. The people of Shreveport deserve that.
Mr. Tarver, any follow-up?
I will use my relationships with people in Washington, D.C. to move the I-49 connector forward. It's not going to be an easy process dealing with the federal government. It's just like dealing with state government.
Okay, that concludes our category on infrastructure. We are a little over halfway through the evening, and we begin with our third category, public safety.
We're going to start with you, Mr. Arsenault, and we're going to start right at the top. If elected, will you continue with Shreveport's current police chief? Please explain why or why not.
All department heads need to be evaluated, but the police chief is particularly special. I have developed a good relationship with Chief Smith, and at the moment, I don't see any reason why I would change. That's all subject to evaluation once I'm obviously in the position. But I think Chief Smith has proved that he has the trust and confidence of the rank and file police officers. And as a result of that, that's the most important part of leadership. In addition to that, it's very important to have continuity of leadership. Over the past several years, there have been a number of changes in the police department. I think that Chief Smith deserves some additional time to develop those relationships and to continue. So I do not currently plan to replace Chief Smith.
Mr. Tarver?
I think he's a fine man. He's a Christian man. He works very hard in the city of Shreveport. He needs help like all of us do. We need to support him. We need to have the office to support him. We need to have the citizens of Shreveport, everyone support this man because he has a very hard job. All of our policemen have a very hard job. They protect us. They stop people every day. They're in danger every day. So yes, I will keep the chief because he's a very fine man.
Mr. Arsenault, follow-up?
No.
Okay, Troy Washington, next question, please.
Expanding upon that just a bit, last year we broke the homicide record. Numbers are down, but people still don't feel safe. Do you have a plan to make people feel more at ease? We'll start with you, Tarver.
Repeat that, please. I didn't hear it.
Last year we broke the homicide record. Numbers are down, but people still don't feel safe. Do you have any plans that you would want to implement to make people feel more at ease?
Well, you know, when I was on the city council, and years before, we started a police community relations in the city of Shreveport. We need to revise that, and people need to participate, and the policemen need to participate, and people need to know the person who is patrolling the area. It's not an easy process. You don't know when someone is going to be killed, but you got to stop these young people. You got to take these guns from these young people. Everyone in the city of Shreveport need to work together in the situation. It's not an easy concept. It's not an easy problem to solve. But we got to work together. We got to put our petty differences aside and start embracing people and working with people. And I think that we can resolve that problem. The people got to know the head. I know the people. It happened, let's be honest, where it's happening at. It's happening in low and moderate income areas. People, like you just got to said, need housing. They don't own the housing. It's rent property. People don't care about rent property like they do their own property. So we need to develop more housing in this city of Shreveport, ownership of housing. And we can get a lot of things done in the city of Shreveport, but it's not going to be an easy concept. It's going to take a lot of work.
Arsenault?
A number of months ago, I posted an outline of my plans in public safety, particularly with respect to the police department, and I'll outline those briefly here. Number one, all hands on deck. We have to make sure that every post-certified officer, that's the fully trained officers, is being utilized in a direct law enforcement investigation position. If they are not, then we need to replace them with reserve officers, auxiliary officers, or even civilians who can perform tasks that don't require post-certification. The second thing is to have relationships between the patrol supervisors and the patrol officers who are actually patrolling a particular neighborhood or particular district. By developing relationships directly with the citizens, two things happen. Number one, you get accountability of the police officers because they know the people they're serving, and you also get knowledge and trust built with the people who are being served, that they feel comfortable communicating with the police officers and letting them know what's going on in the community. The third is more long-term, and that has to do with the elimination of blight. We've already covered that in the infrastructure discussion, but that is a very important part of any kind of a long-term plan to reduce crime and make people feel safer in their neighborhoods.
Mr. Tarver, 30 seconds.
No.
No? Next question, please.
All right, we'll start with you, Mr. Arsenault. How will you address the issue of overcrowding at the Caddo Correctional Center? It's a large problem.
It is a large problem. It's also not one that the city can do very much about. Most of the people that are in CCC are awaiting trial. The trial process for felonies, which is most of the people who are in CCC, the trial process is up to the district attorney and the court system. The faster we can get those people through the court system and into state custody, then the more that overcrowding will be avoided. So I plan to work with the district attorney and to visit with the district judges to see what we might be able to do to speed up that process so that there will be more room made in CCC.
Does some of that lie with the Public Defender's Office as well, though?
Well, there's a huge problem in the Public Defender's Office. I've written about that a number of times over a period of years because the funding for public defenders is, number one, inadequate because it has an inadequate source. One of the reasons that people are unable to bring cases to trial is the workload of public defenders. So that's an important, but that's really a state issue, and I would continue my advocacy to provide a stable and adequate source of public defenders because the public has an interest in public defenders, because public defenders are necessary to get people to trial. If you don't have the public defenders, then the people languish in CCC, some of them there for a number of years.
Sure. Mr. Tarver, overcrowding at CCC?
It's not the responsibility of the mayor's office to deal with that, but we must work together because, let's be honest, most of the people at CDC is from Shreveport. They're from the city of Shreveport. That's why we must do whatever we can do by working together with the sheriff, with the district attorney, with the judges, and try to move this forward. Because it's gonna come one time that the federal judge will say, hey, you can't send nobody else out there. Right. And what we're gonna do then the city jail's gonna be crowded. So what we must do, we'll sit committees up and see what we can do to help the sheriff department, the DA, and speed up the trial system. It's not an easy process because, you know, I was at the meeting with the sheriff. He invited me to a meeting. One of the problems, everybody have legal rights. Everybody want to put things off to the next month or the next 6 months. So we got to work together with the sheriff department. We got to work together with the DA and form a committee and see what we can do to help. I don't know exactly what needs to be done, but out of this, the committee, we probably can come up with the answers.
Mr. Arsenault, 30 seconds.
No, thank you.
Troy Washington, next question, please.
We'll start with you, Tarver. We have been hiring more officers, and detectives are even solving more crimes, but there are still so many unsolved murders and crimes out there. What's the plan to make sure that some murders are closed and those crimes are solved to give people a sense of peace?
Well, we need to bring in, if we can't complete all the crime of death and problems like that, we need to work with the sheriff department. We need to work with the district attorney. We need to work with the FBI and see can we form a committee to see what we can do to help and assist in solving a lot of these crime problems. We know that a lot of times the citizens know. The citizens got to participate. They have a responsibility also. But most of the time, the citizens don't want to get involved because they're afraid of repercussions. We got to do something to protect the citizen who come in and give us the information and protect them. And so we can resolve some of these problems. But we're not going to be able to do it by ourselves. We got to form the committee. We got to have the sheriff. We got to have the district attorney. We got to have the FBI. We need to use the marshal's office to assist us. We are short in policemen right now. We got to use better technology at this time to see what we can do. You can't get technology the best thing to do is to have a person there. But at the same time, you have to get the technology because, for example, a shot spotter, they can tell in 60 seconds where a shot come from. So you have to utilize this, and technology moves so fast today. Look at your telephone. Every year they have a new phone. So what we got to do, we got to work together with the police department, with the sheriff, with the city chief of police, and see can we help solve some of these crimes.
Would you look at investing in that technology or first tackling it with the community and the committee you mentioned?
Well, technology. If we could have the technology, it's a lot of technology available out there. You just have to pay the price for the technology. I think we need to use a lot of technology. And
Time,
we can
please.
probably resolve some of the crime problems.
Arsenault?
Okay, I think that one of the things that I think we can do to assist in the solution will be to involve the city attorney's office to work with the police department so that the workup of the crimes is more effective. Our police officers do a great job, but their primary purpose is law enforcement, not necessarily report writing. They're trained in report writing, but it's helpful to have someone to supervise to determine, what are the holes in the case, where do we need additional investigation so that when the case does get to the district attorney's office, it's in a good position to be prosecuted, and the DA's office is not having to do the prosecution without a full workup of the case. Technology is wonderful, it's also expensive. And so the thing I think that we need to do is to work more carefully with the technology we have with the real-time crime center, and then to work with police officers to develop relationships so that they're able to get more information from neighborhoods.
Mr. Tarver, 30 seconds.
We need to move the crime center in the police department where the professionals are. And I think that they're in the process of doing something like that, but we need to have the crime center in the police department that is controlled by policemen.
One final question before we move on. Dan?
Mr. Arsenault, we'll start with you. Will you continue with Chief Smith's idea of substations being built throughout the city? Voters backed police and firefighters in the most recent bond issue. Do you agree with that idea?
Well, the people of Shreveport have given us a directive, so yes, I agree with that idea. The Chief Smith has made a good case on substations. We will have 3 of them, and I think the thing to do is to evaluate those. You have to evaluate the cost of them as well as their effectiveness. Each of those will be at least 6,000 square feet, so there not only will be substations, there'll be community centers as well. And as a result of that, I think there will be some public benefit to that, but it's something we need to keep track of to determine the cost effectiveness of it versus building more. I think the people of Shreveport decided that they wanted those, they voted on it directly, and so I support the decision of the people of Shreveport.
Mr. Tarver?
I support the decision of the people of Shreveport. At the same time, I don't think that we really thought it completely out. It might be 6,000 square feet, but you don't have to put personnel there. Right now, we're short of policemen. We don't have to man all of these centers, and it might take 5 or 6 people. That means we won't have to hire additional officers. I think that we need to think through the process first. And let me say this to you, bricks and mortar don't stop no crime. We need to put more money in policemen, pay policemen better. That is one of the ways we can stop crime and help solve the crime problem. So I'd rather sit down and have a conversation with the chief of police and see how much it will cost the city of Shreveport, because it's going to cost a lot more than you think. If we're short now, if you open 3 substations, you're going to be shorter. You're going to be at least short about 30 more people, because you don't have to man that all the time.
Mr. Arsenault?
Oh, your rebuttal? I don't have your
None?
rebuttal.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Well, that concludes our category on crime. We now enter our lightning round. Each candidate will get a question, and we'll have 1 minute to answer without rebuttal. So some of these questions, by the way, were submitted by our audience, who are also Rhino Coffee customers, and we appreciate Rhino for helping us with these questions. So shall we begin? Let's see. Troy Washington, if you will start first.
We'll start with you, Tarver. Under the Perkins administration, there were some projects that were started that haven't been finished. For example, the effort to bring a new sports team to the city. How do you plan to handle that unfinished business? Will you be continuing those projects or moving on?
I will look at the projects and see what the projects at this particular time, and do we have the money for the project of the baseball team I think you're talking about, correct? It will cost, I don't know exactly how much it will cost. I don't even know if they have a memorandum of understanding on the baseball team from the company. I don't know where it should be built at. Should it be built downtown, or should it be built over in the Queensboro area? So it's a lot of unanswered questions about that. But I don't think right now we have the money, and we need to look at spending that type of money at this particular time, but we're short in the city of Shreveport. We got $20 million reserved for next year. If we don't do something about enlarging the scope, we'll have a problem with bonding. We'll never be able to bond because we are 3B right now, and we used to be an A. So it's gonna take a lot of thoughts.
Time.
Arsenault.
Sports teams are, particularly professional sport teams, appeal to the egos and the pride of people. But what really drives economic development in the sports area is amateur sports, youth sports, because that's what actually puts heads on beds, is people coming to a place like Shreveport to participate with their children. It's also a healthy and family-oriented business. I spent 4 hours last week participating in a visioning conference by the Shreveport Bossier Convention Tourist Bureau, and it's very clear that where our best results in increasing economic development in sports is more likely with amateur sports and youth sports than with professional sports.
Next question, please.
Mr. Tarver, have you solicited the endorsement of other candidates who are in this race, and if so, whom?
I've talked to 2 other candidates that's in this race, Ms. Fuller, the city council, and the commissioner, and asked for their support.
Mr. Arsenault?
I've spoken with several of the other candidates. Those are private conversations, and I think you'll be seeing the results of some of those in the near future.
How many?
3.
Next question, please.
We'll start with Arsenault. And this question starts with the Real-Time Crime Center. We've talked a little bit about it. Do you think it should be operated by police as it is in New Orleans instead of a city employee?
I do think that the Real-Time Crime Center should be centered in the police department.
Tarver.
I'm very clear it should be with professionals and at the police department.
Next question, please.
Mr. Arsenault, we'll start with you. What lessons have you learned on the campaign trail, and how do you feel those lessons will help you in your tenure potentially as mayor?
The most important thing that I've learned is in walking from door to door in neighborhoods all over Shreveport is how much consensus there is about what is needed in the city and how much common sense the people of Shreveport have. A lot of times it's easy to think that the people at the top have all the information, have all the answers, but what I find is that the people in the neighborhoods have good, solid common sense, and if we listen to those people, we'll be able to find solutions that all the people of Shreveport can support.
Mr. Tarver, lessons learned?
In knocking on doors, I found that people are concerned and love the city of Shreveport. They want to see the city of Shreveport move forward. A lot of the people remember the city and downtown development. Right now, downtown is more of a ghost town. They remember when they had retail stores, and they want to bring the old Shreveport back. They want to build up downtown. They want to build up their community. And let me tell you something. They might not have a PhD degree, but they have common sense.
We have just a few minutes remaining for perhaps 2 more questions.
Okay, I'll start with you, Arsenault. History shows that candidates often run on promises of change that never happen. What is different about you, and why should we believe you?
I think what's different about me is I'm very careful about what I promise, because I know from serving on the city council that once you get into an office, you look at information, you have additional information that you don't have. So what I've tried to do is to lay out objectives, to lay out ideas, to lay out principles that I plan to govern by without saying we will do X, Y, Z, because we all know that those are very difficult to keep. And so what I've tried to do is to let people know what I am about and what I would like to do, and then we'll roll up our sleeves on December 31st and get to work on it.
Tarver.
In 35 years I've been elected official. I ran for office 13 or 14 times. I've never lost a race because I give the people exactly what I tell them that I'm gonna do. I've been reelected because I get the job done in Baton Rouge. I bring money to the city of Shreveport. I tell about LSU Med School. I tell the story of LSU Med School. From the Confederate Hospital to the LSU Med School today. I tell the story about Southern University. Everybody assumed that we was not going to get a law school. Now we have a law school in the city of Shreveport. I received the money for that. I had a lot of help. I work with people, and people know I get the job done. I don't tell people something I can't do.
Next question, please.
Mr. Arsenault, if you receive a $100 million grant for the city to use in any way, where does that money go? What is the first priority?
I think the first priority is infrastructure. If we get $100 million, that's a generational source of money, and that ought to be used for generational purposes. So if somebody gave me $100 million, or if I won the $100 million lottery to put it in the city of Shreveport, the first thing I would do would be to determine community priorities. $100 million would not solve all of our infrastructure problems. So the first thing that I would do is ask the citizens to give us our input and come up with a consensus plan that establishes the priorities to use that $100 million.
Mr. Tarver?
I think it's very clear the citizens have already told us exactly what we need. Infrastructure, the potholes, the dirty area we have in the city of Shreveport. Look at the highways, all the paper, all the tall grass. They want that cleaned up. They want the city cleaned up. It makes the city better for economic development. I will use that money to clean up the city and infrastructure, fix the potholes, so I won't hit 15 every time I go to work.
That concludes our question and answers for this evening, and now we have 1 minute comment from each candidate, beginning with Mr. Tarver.
I appreciate all the support that I've received. I thank the people of the city of Shreveport for supporting me. I need your vote, I need your support, and I need your prayers. This has been a long journey for me in Shreveport, Louisiana. Like I said, I've been in office 35 years. I worked for the city of Shreveport for 35 years. I brought money to the city of Shreveport. I work with the people of the city of Shreveport. I know how to work with a cross-section. You know, we have today that people look at you not as being not only black or white, they look at you if you're a Democrat or Republican. I don't understand that, but they do. People vote on party lines instead of looking at a person for what he is. So I ask for your vote. I'm a Democrat. I'm proud to be black, and I need your help.
Mr. Arsenault.
My friends, what you have before you is a decision on who you think has a plan and who you think can implement that plan. I've tried to lay out over the course of this campaign plans for economic development, plans for public safety, plans for the elimination of blight. Those are all very important things, and because I've laid those out, I hope that I've given you confidence in me that I can accomplish those things. I also know how to work with the city council. I've been a member of the council and for 8 years and worked to develop long-term relationships with other council members. That's the same kind of thing that I will be able to do as your mayor. I'm looking to serve you, the people of Shreveport. I love Shreveport. I love the people of Shreveport. What I need to do to be able to serve you is I need to have your vote. I need to have your support. And I ask for that for vote number 64, Tom Arsenault for mayor of Shreveport.
And so we conclude our Shreveport mayoral debate. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, panelists. And thank you, our audience, for participating. And don't forget, Go out and vote. This is Chuck Smith for Red River Radio. Good evening and drive home safely.